This is the CBS Evening News.
Hi, I'm Andrew Bernstein.
I'm Mike Hudson.
We're here with CBS News, and today, June 2nd, 1992, we will be examining the space race and the events that unfolded. The space race was a historical competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. It was filled with a great deal of drama and nationalism.
To begin, each side in the feud wanted victory, in order to honorably represent their country and prove that their political beliefs were dominant. The United States wanted to show that democracy was the right way to lead society into a brighter future. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, thought that communism was a correct belief that would lead society into success.
During 1958, the United States made two steps that put them on the right track beginning the space race. The first event was the establishment of NASA in October of 1958. This set up a formal organization to oversee space exploration. 1961 was also an important year for space travel. In April, the Vostok 1, launched by the USSR, took Yuri Gagarin into space, being the first man in space. Less than a month later, the U.S. sends Alan Shepard into space, in a way mimicking and showing determination to reach space.
One of the major rally cries in the space race was a speech by President John F. Kennedy, when he famously said, "We choose to go to the moon." Here's a clip now.
William Bradford, speaking in 1630 of the founding of the Plymouth Bay Colony, said that all great and honorable actions are accompanied with great difficulties, and both must be enterprised and overcome with answerable courage. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not. We mean to be a part of it. We mean to lead it. For the eyes of the world now look into space, to the moon, and to the planets beyond. Our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require us to make this effort, to solve these mysteries, to solve them for the good of all men. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
4 years after the first man in space, the Soviet Union sent Alexei Leonov on a mission. After reaching space in 1965, Alexei became the first man to take a spacewalk. A spacewalk is what many people think of when thinking of astronauts. A walk while still connected to the shuttle, almost drifting in space. This single event proved the USSR's dominance in this battle, as the US followed with their own spacewalk only 3 months later with Edward White.
I think it is very evident that the United States is trailing this dogfight. Don't you think, Andrew?
That's a good point, Mike. I think our viewers can see this by the fact that the United States always is one step behind the USSR in space advancements.
I agree, and as we all know that this is not a lasting occurrence. Again in 1996, the USSR launches the Luna 9, which is the first spacecraft ever to soft land on the moon. The U.S. copies this about 4 months later with a spacecraft that will be known as the Surveyor 1. The real breakthrough came for the U.S. in 1969, when famous astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins first landed on the moon and took the first moonwalk. We all remember the images of Neil Armstrong planting the flag in the moon and famously saying, "One step for man and a giant leap for mankind."
This single event shows that the U.S. was now on top and flexing their muscles over the Soviet Union. This event also showed the pride these astronauts had in their own country, and proved their nationalistic efforts were successful.
And we have a short clip now.
2, 1, 0, all engine running. Liftoff, we have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Take shadow. 4 forward. back light. Okay, engine stop. Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. I'm at the foot of the ladder. The LEM footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches. I'm going to step off the LEM now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Tony, this is so great you can't believe it. I believe it, Charlie. It's raining, John. Look at it go, would you, Charlie? You got all your steering, it's great. Oh, this is going to be some kind of different ride. Hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale. Da 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 da. Hippity hopping along. One ignition.
The USSR makes one last significant push in the space race from 1970 to 1974. During this time period, they were able to establish one successful space station out of 3 attempts, collect soil samples, and lastly develop the Salyut 3, which is a military space station. After these final actions from the Soviets, the U.S. goes on to discover frost on Mars, send a woman into space, and invent the Hubble telescope, which is much more significant compared to the Soviets. The Hubble telescope is deployed in space on a satellite, which goes 17,000 miles per hour and which has made 1.2 million observations. Here is a picture of the Hubble telescope.
The most recent event of the space race was the testing that took place last year in 1991. The shuttle Columbia carried around a space lab named SLS-1 into orbit and did tests on the effects of weightlessness in space on humans. Before we go, we have an interview with the infamous Neil Armstrong.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm welcoming to the first man to walk on the moon, Mr. Astronaut himself, Neil Armstrong. How you doing today, Neil?
Good, how you doing?
I'm fine. So I got a couple questions to ask you for our viewers, sir, okay? So the first question I have to ask is, what was your favorite part about space travel?
You know, it had to be the experience, being out in space, getting a different perspective, you know, not being on Earth, you know, seeing things from space. It's pretty cool.
Alright, so the next question I have to ask is, what are some important things that we should know about you that we don't personally know about you?
Well, some things that many people don't know about me is I did serve in the Korean War, you know. I was also a pilot, a U.S. Navy pilot. Many people don't know that about me. Childhood dream was always to become a pilot, you know.
And the last question, one more question I have to ask you, Neil, is, what are you currently doing? Like, how has the space thing, like, affected your life? Like, what are you doing now? Like, have you ever thought about, like, re-entering it, maybe?
I've given it a little thought, you know. I think it's best to go out on a good note, you know. Everybody knows Neil Armstrong and the success.
Walk on the moon.
Yeah, you know. I mean, it's definitely impacted my life in a great way, and I'm very grateful for that, you know.
Alright, Neil, that's all we got for today.
Alright, thank you.
Alright, thank you for meeting for me today.
That's all we have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching.
See you next time.
Good night.